Hi guys, welcome to the video. In this week's video we're going to talk about how graphite studies can help you with your watercolor. At the beginning of every year, I found I like to do a kind of a small project. Like last year we did the Colour a Day project. This year was 2022 and I wanted to do kind of a 3D, kind of a rendering project. You can see like a few examples there. These ones we did on the channel together, and I'll link these videos below. Anyway, this is going to be a little bit more like a mini course, and I'll kind of put the curriculum under the video with links. I know you've been waiting for quite a few weeks for a video, so I hope this is kind of a really nice kind of surprise at the end of it. So yeah, we started with some of those kind of easier 3D objects, and then I did this as kind of like my final, like the finale, like the final product or project of this kind of series of projects. And basically I was just kind of looking up like rendering or 3D shapes online, and then I would just kind of do my own version. Like here you can see I was thinking about chiaroscuro and this kind of the darkness, the light of the objects emerging out of the dark there, and what it would be like if there were different kind of lights reflecting kind of around. So I didn't really have anything to base this off. I was just kind of making it up as I went along. You can see here, like this was the first page. This was the first time I tried it, and you can see kind of how scribbly there my marks were. And so I was just kind of just trying to decide here if this was a project I wanted to do, if it was something that I thought would be beneficial, and I found that it was really interesting. So then I went and did this page and did this a little bit more detailed. I put a bit more time and thought into each of the different shapes, and then you can see I finished off with like an emblem at the top there. So I really enjoyed kind of putting this all together at the time. You can see like in the shadows I've also put some light and some color in the shadows. The year before we'd also been working on emblems. So what's interesting is like I kind of swap around, like every year I might do emblems one year, and then rendering, and then color and kind of color mixing. So it's very nice to kind of have different things to focus on. Like you can see here, this was a pencil color wheel, and I was really working on getting those just getting a nice kind of line and a nice shine with the pencils there. So yep, and then kind of at the back here I've got some things I am thinking about. Like at the time I was thinking, and you can see these are still really relevant to like what I am enjoying painting and working on today. So let's fast forward to what I've been working on for this video. So this is in the large Hahnemuller Nostalgie. It's the A4 sketchbook. It's kind of got like a thick, like a cardstock type paper in it. But I found, you can see here, like it does work for thin kind of watercolor washes. And yeah, at the beginning here, I wanted to I always like to open the sketchbook with some kind of an emblem or something. So I used this kind of frame from the printables and sketched it out, changed it a little bit, and I wanted to kind of like look into a little landscape there. So this next page I hadn't quite finished yet, and then this was a really interesting one, so we're going to look at this a lot more today. But I saw this on an Instagram reel where the artist had made the sphere and then kind of put different like pears and apples and pottery vessels flipped in like this, so that you could kind of create different elements from this sphere. And so then this was kind of my final project for this year. And so this is like a silver kind of sugar pot. And I didn't really take this off anything. I kind of took it off a few different references. I have kind of a brass one that's similar to this but doesn't have handles. And so, yeah, what I am going to do is... Anyway, I'll talk about that in a minute. So this is some acanthus leaves. I was also working on these. You can see that this is something I haven't gotten around to finishing yet, but again, something that's interesting. And I found that actually watching engravers create these is really helpful. But yep, and so then I also found another reel of you can see kind of the progression of the pages there, but I found another reel of these 3D shapes, and this artist creates these shapes that you can like pull the string and the shape will emerge in your sketchbook. So I really loved this idea, and again I wanted to think about this. So I have this little paper ruler from the St. Louis Art Supply. I love that they send these out, but I just made a little 1 inch by 1 inch square. So I kind of used the edge of the paper there, made a couple of 1 inch marks, and then I could go around and just create this little square. And then from there, I've kind of looked at the shape that's on the reel, and I've just actually used a square. I did it a little bit more carefully than this, but it's basically two squares next to each other, then you move it up, and then you do two squares here. So I'm just kind of keep putting these extra two dots on, move it along, and this is basically how I found that instead of kind of having to measure and do all these things, I could just kind of do this quite quickly. So yep, I just kept doing this, and then at the end of this I could actually take the ruler and just rule along these lines to create this shape. So this was really helpful. And then I just I'm showing you here kind of where to punch the holes, and then you thread the some string through, cut this out, and it will when you pull the string it will create this square. And the same thing is I used this same 1 inch square to create the rectangle shape as well. So yep, in the same way, just dotted everything, and then I could outline it with the ruler. So then I cut everything out, and I've used a Japanese hole punch. This is really good for like bookbinding, but it creates like really small holes here. So I mean, you can just use like a needle and thread, but I just liked creating it like this. You've got to kind of punch it on a piece of kind of thicker cardboard or something, and yep, it's a little bit fiddly to do kind of one-handed, but yeah, it's fairly, you know, easy. And then I used a thread. I used like a metallic thread just from Michaels, just a DMC metallic thread. Yep, and then I'm just putting glue on the bottom flap of each, and being sure not to put any glue where the the thread is, because that thread has to move through the holes there. So yeah, and so this was really interesting, and you might kind of wonder why this would be so necessary, but how you see volume and how you interpret volume will become part of your style. So if you, for example, if you flatten, like in pop art, they kind of flatten volume out. They're kind of taking volume away. Or, if you're doing like botanical illustration, you have to highly and meticulously render volume. So, it does help you to start to think about form and what you're seeing and how to interpret that and how you want to interpret that. So you can see here that this has taken me quite a few weeks as well to organize all these things. So I do recommend that you pick a week and just maybe work on one of the things, and then one of the things the next week. I'll put a list of everything below, but you can change that around as to what you might want to include or change, how that works. But one of the nice things about creating this sphere is that once you've done the sphere, you just have to do these top portions, so it doesn't take as long as doing the entire thing again, which is quite nice. And you can think about, again, we're thinking about volume and how to create it, how to mold it. And this sphere can become a pear with just a few minor changes. If we elongate it, it can become a vase to hold flowers. If we actually take away some of that sphere, we can create an entirely new shape and kind of this whole new idea of a subject. So it's, again, kind of thinking through form and what are your creative options. When you have a tree, or when you have something like a flower, how the fact that you can kind of change things to fit better like what you want to convey. And this is a really wonderful way to kind of think that through. I hope this makes sense. The other thing here is the shadow. So you can see that with the shadow, here it would be different. It would be a different shape. And with the vase here, you'd have a more elongated top portion of the shadow. So that is one thing to consider. You may just want to do a very shallow, kind of small shadow. So that doesn't, anyway, but that's entirely up to you. But this here it's just a little bit of footage of me actually creating the sphere. And last time when I did this, I'm also showing you I'm holding the pencil right back. So I'm using my pinky to kind of rest on the paper, and the pencil is almost flat to the paper. I'm kind of going in small circular motions. So I'm just trying to kind of show you that there. So rather than pointing up, I'm actually flattening the pencil, holding it right back, and just kind of these small circular motions to kind of get an even coverage and kind of build this up slowly. So you can see here I'm using the Faber-Castell. These are the graphite aquarelle, so they're the watercolor graphites. And so I'm going from the HB very, very finely to the 2B. I'm starting to deepen that up, and then I go to the 4B, and then at the very end, mainly I used the 8B to do the shadow actually. But last time when I did this, I was just using the graphite color, just one pencil for the whole thing. So you don't have to use multiple pencils, but it certainly does make an impact. It helps to create a greater contrast and in turn more of a glow on the object. So the other thing I did is in between each layer, I just with my hand, with my finger, I just smoothed it all out, like between every single layer. So, you know, I'd do it once, then I'd smooth it out, then I'd do it again. And it just helps to give that sort of softened look. And then I use, you could see there, like the 8B sort of for the shadow. You can see the cat there, but what I've organised is, because I am not able to do such long videos every week or every 2 weeks at the minute, I have opened I've had one for a while, a Substack, and I'm going to put like some just 5 to 10 minute tutorials that kind of go more in depth. You can see here, like, this is part of it. So we're going to go through and create this sphere together. I think it's about a 5 to 10 minute tutorial. So I'll have these all up on there on Monday or Tuesday, and then you can watch them all in real time. I've kind of time-lapsed this here, but you'll be able to watch this and go through it and work on it with me. And yeah, so hopefully that is quite helpful. So not only do I have this 40-minute video, but I've also got like 40 minutes worth of 4 or 5 other videos to upload on there for you. So hopefully this will be quite a nice parcel of videos. But so the next thing we're looking at is this vase, and we are actually going to create it in watercolor. But this vase we created already with graphite. So again, this will be another part of these tutorials on the Eau Poetique Substack. And I'll go through, and we will create the one on the left there. We'll create like the top of the vase, so you can do that with me and kind of see. We'll just do it in kind of smaller scale so I can keep the videos there shorter. But yeah, we'll create those together on there as well. So once you've done the pencil study, and this is part of what I want to talk about, how this can help you with watercolor. So I can kind of show you this in practice. So pencil is a lot more like watercolor. You first find the highlights, you preserve them, you add the mid-tones, and you're kind of working a lot in half-tones. You're deepening them, then like you kind of diffuse them. You could use an eraser, or you can kind of shade them out with your finger. And then the final touches are the deepest shadows. So this really helps us to kind of see what we are looking to create when we paint. And you can see here I'm already, like, I've looked at the vase reference, and I can see where the highlight that is there. So I'm kind of pulling that out with my brush and lifting there a little bit, and then I'm just adding, I'm kind of dropping water into, or pigment into this kind of water that we've added, and just creating this really soft, pale, watery wash around where the lightest kind of highlights are. And then I can keep dropping in paint, to kind of just deepen up those shadows. And it's really, really a nice way to see that progression. One of the things to keep in mind is that you do want watercolors that behave nicely. What I mean is, for example, if I tried doing this with nickel azo yellow, it would just be flowing everywhere and I wouldn't be able to control it very well. So some pigments like to stay more in one area, and so that's quite helpful in instances like this, where you're kind of trying to manipulate the watercolor to do what you want, and to be where you want it to be and where you put it on the paper. one of the important things here is that I'm not smearing the color around. My brush is actually quite light, like my touch is quite light with the brush, and I'm just gently placing the watercolor down. So I don't want to be kind of pressing into the paper and like smooshing it back and forth, if that makes sense. You'll create kind of a mess. So yeah, these are all kind of little refining things that you kind of learn the more that you paint. So yeah. And like, this is only one kind of technique and one way to paint. What we're talking about here is just trying to find the form of something, how to control water and watercolor. So it's a really nice exercise in that. And then you can see here that I'm just creating these little roses to the side here. So we will look at more how to actually create these in the next painting that we do of the little kind of sugar bowl. One of the other things you'll notice here that I've switched to this really tiny fine brush, and in the beginning these kind of annoyed me because they don't hold much paint, but what I found is that I couldn't get the delicacy of some of the marks that I was looking for, especially because I don't work overly large. So you know, if you had a bigger picture it might be different, but trying to get the delicacy of some of those little nuances and kind of notations that I wanted to get on there, I needed to scale down the brush tip and just really be able to kind of get in there and make some really nice fine lines. So you can see here the rendered version next to the painted version. Now I could actually go back in once this is dry and glaze another layer of shadows kind of on top of the, especially more like on the right side of the vase there, and deepen that like we did in the graphite. But yeah, I've run out of time. But so the next thing that we're going to work on here is this sugar bowl. So I got this actually off Etsy for my mum a few years ago. It's a really beautiful little kind of soft porcelain, yeah, kind of antique. I don't know why they don't make things like this anymore. I mean, it's just so lovely, but I thought, let's paint this. So, and in order to paint it, we first want to kind of have a look at it from different angles, kind of get a feeling for the shapes. You can see here that we've already done the graphite study of this sugar bowl, and then we've done the really like ornate silver sugar bowl. So we've kind of got this already idea of the structure. This one's a little bit more elaborate, so I like the one that we're going to paint in watercolor because we don't have so much detail as this. And you can see this will also be on the Substack. This will be the only one that's actually in a time lapse because this took quite a long time to finish. So, but I've shortened it down to a 10-minute video. So, but I think it will be really helpful to see that kind of come to life. So. Yeah, you can see we're still kind of looking here at the roses. We've got a green rose, leaves, a little rose down the bottom, and just sort of the colours and the shapes of everything that's going on there. So we can kind of look at that and then just start sort of, I know sometimes things can be like overwhelming to look at the thing, where do you start? And you can start with one of the roses and then see how the next one is placed in relation to the first one. But because I feel like this is such a whole important thing, I'm gonna have all these sketches that I've done in a PDF printable, so it should be available again with all the stuff on Substack. I'll put that in my Etsy maybe Monday or Tuesday, so that you can trace those out, you can accurately sketch them and then work on these things. So you can see I'm also looking at those striations, just the very slight kind of shading and highlights on the side there. Yep, so I'm going in here and just wetting the colours that I think we're going to need. It's always nice to kind of do that and just start to get your kind of brain to wake up creatively and think about the colors. So yeah, I'm using for the base of this is the pistachio from Stone Ground Paints. It's almost an exact replica, which is really nice. And this would be something like a phthalo green mixed with a lot of white. And then I've put that down and I'm going in here and just pulling out these highlights. So I keep dabbing my brush off on the paper towel, but I can tell that I think this is a phthalo pigment because see, it's quite staining. It's quite hard to actually lift. So I just have to work on that a little bit for a while. Then I'm using some of the Blue John from Wallace and Seymour as like a shadow, and this you could also use like a neutral tint, really watered out, or with some white. I find this is just a really nice kind of soft shadow color. So you can see that I'm dropping in colour, I'm softening out the edges. We talk a lot about this in the watercolour class, the landscape class. And then I'm getting some of these pinks and kind of mixing some pinks together here for their roses. So I'm starting with the kind of deepest parts of the middle of the rose. And again, so you can see how like there's quite a lot of paint on my brush. So it's hard to get the detail. This is why I do like to go down to a smaller, finer brush. Then I'm just putting a little bit of kind of a softer value of this color into the kind of the shadows of the outer petals when the rose kind of falls open. You can see here like there's a bit too much on my brush, so you can either dab it on some paper towel. I will often wipe it off on the palette as well, and yeah, you can just kind of leave the color on the palette, or rinse a little bit off in the water. So yeah, I'm just putting this kind of softer version of the pink on there, and then there's a little rose kind of hidden under the bottom there. I changed the shape of this a little bit. It's a little bit more oval when you see it in real life, but I've kind of flattened it out a little bit to just have room to kind of put all this in. And I actually just lifted out some of the colour there on the sides of the rose where there would be some highlights. So now we're going in and we're starting some of the leaves, and yeah, I'm just dropping in colour, nothing too difficult here. I'm just kind of plopping that in, and one thing that you can do is, which I didn't do here, like when I'm filming, I'm not mixing as much necessarily as I would. So in real life, I'd be keep going back to my palette for every couple of leaves and mix. But what I do here is I just go back and like get a little bit of a different green, and I will just drop that in. So we're looking at these 3 leaves at the top, and these are more kind of the negative shape kind of. So what I do is I put them in, and then I rinse off my brush, and I kind of pull some of that colour out so we get that more muted leaf colour that's actually on the thing, and we'll paint around them later. But now we're going to look at this green rose. So you could see I just kept adding colour into the centre of that one, so I actually did it the opposite way. I did the most of the rose first, and then I did the centre. So there's lots of different ways you can paint things as well. And then we're starting to kind of add in the background here. So I've mixed up a slightly different green just to differentiate that from the background a little bit. And then as it moves around the emblem, the green kind of shifts, and you get some kind of green golds, you get some more olive greens. So I'm just following kind of as I can see it. So you can see I've used a darker green here at the top to kind of go back around those roses and make them kind of fall into this kind of highlight. And then we're getting some French ochre, and I'm just putting this in as the kind of the gold around the emblem here. Okay, so you can see that one thing you can do is lift some highlights back out, but I'm also just dabbing some colour back in here. And again, you can take more time and like just slightly alter the mix a little bit. It creates a little bit more just dynamic and kind of a realistic look there. And then I'm just going in here with the gold, and I'm using a darker brown. You can see I've kind of lifted out some highlights there, and I'm just adding some darker brown in there to make it look a little bit more like there's movement and shadows. Again, just creating that form, not entirely, but just in a nice kind of relaxed way. The last thing that we do here is get a little bit of gold. You can see again I've got the tiny brush, and I am just using this gold ink and just going to line out some of these areas so that when you when you get the page on the right angle, you see this shimmer and this kind of nice surprise of the gold. So the last thing we do here is I'm getting just water on a larger brush, and I am kind of wetting the area underneath here. So I'm trying to get like an angle where you can kind of see the water, but we put a fair amount of water on here. Then I'm going to damp my brush off and kind of soften out the edges so we don't get like a hard water line. And yeah, I'm just kind of creating a shadow color. You can see here a few times in the video I just kind of use whatever's on the palette and kind of mix that together to create like a shadow tone, and I can kind of dip into a little bit more of one or the other thing. So if I wanted the orange, I can just create like a little bit more of a light in that. So here's the final product. The last thing I wanted to talk to you about is something really exciting. So it kind of, it's an older video, I think, but it goes along with this so well. And some of you might have seen this video, but I only just found it a couple of weeks ago, and I put it on my favorites playlist. So this was a talk with Kathleen Speranza. She paints the most incredible roses. I actually have 4 kind of favorite flower painters, I'd say. Well, there's probably a few more, but you know that I love Claire Basler, and she kind of paints the fleeting beauty, the kind of the fleeting moment, but that kind of lasting impression that flowers have on you. And then we have Karen Gerard, whose whole process is this incredible work of art. It's like a dance. She enlarges flowers. It's so beautiful. And then we have Katie Whipple, who has like this impasto solidity. It's really sublime. And then we have Kathleen Speranza, who creates these kind of dreamlike, beautiful, beautiful roses. And in this video, she shows you how she kind of sketches things out, and she shows you, she actually uses powdered graphite. I'm just using here this Derwent XL. I actually tried a few different things. I really like this one. This is the burnt umber version. It has kind of a little bit of pink and a bit of brown, but you can get kind of this quite soft texture here with it. And then she uses a kneadable eraser, and she just kind of keeps kneading this and creating these, so she's pulling the highlights out. And yeah, it's really, really interesting and a really beautiful thing. Like I'd actually like to try this with different pastels, and even like doing some gradient backgrounds, and then doing this like with different flowers. We might try this a little bit more over when some flowers start coming out. This would be a really nice way to do portraits. So anyway, I will leave the video in the description and all the links to everything. I should have the Substack organized by next Monday or Tuesday, so you can go there and find all the extra information, and there'll be a printable so you can draw out all of the things we've talked about today. So yeah, I hope this finds you well. I hope you have a really lovely weekend. I'm sorry this last portion, my microphone has just conked it. I don't know what's going on here, but to get the video out to you, I hope this is okay. And I hope you have a really lovely week, and I will see you guys in the next video, maybe in 3 weeks. And hopefully I'll also have an update on some watercolor news. Okay, bye.